All right, so December is going to be safety and survival for our monthly training. We're going to go over the RIT pack, have a review with that. We're going to mix in some SCBA, buddy breathing, how to hook up the universal connections to the SCBAs, and then we'll go in the basement of the ACE and we'll cover the entanglement props and confined space and a few other little things down there. So it'll be a pretty fun month. To start out, we'll go over first, know all of the SCBAs that cover your area. So just around us, we have MSA, Scott, and Draeger. We're going to cover the Scott RIT pack to start. With the Scott, we got two different spots to start. The T-bar, when we open that up, goes to our gauge and our valve to turn on, and it also hits our universal connection. So the first thing we want to do, turn on our bottle. Make sure it's going to go all the way on, make sure we're full. We are running a 60-minute bottle with this. Once our bottle's all the way on, we check the gauge on the bottle, make sure it's at our full, and then we make sure the exterior gauge is at our full. We don't have a pass alarm on this, so there's nothing we have to silence or worry about that in those lines. We have the ball, which the ball leads to our mask, which the mask we keep hooked up to the whip or our buddy breathing connection, which is two parts now. Originally it was the EBSS, and now they're making it universal across all SCBA companies. So you have your UEBSS. Basically we just call it a whip. Either it's the universal whip or your regular whip. But we keep it hooked up so we can, for the quick connections, either do the quick universal connection, or you can come over to your whip or your buddy breathing connection. The black side is going to be your universal, and then the gray side is the older version, the original EBSS, which is what our packs are still hooked up to. So until everyone has new packs and new RIT packs, we have both types hooked up on the side with the pulp. When the mask is hooked up, we have to remember either we're going to be cracking the bypass for them to breathe, because if they can't inhale and open the regulator, we could also hit the front to open up the regulator. There's that connection in there that a couple good hits on it pops it open. But we always keep these hooked up for worst case scenario. Otherwise, on our Scott RIT packs, we keep a daisy chain of webbing. And then we also, instead of worrying about whether packs will be able to be converted for drags, or if the waistbands are going to break or anything along those lines, we keep a loop with two carabiners, hook into the SCBA, run it through their legs, hook into the other side, and then just give them a good cinch down. And that way we don't have to worry about who has what brand or anything along those lines, or losing your connection, your waistband connection in the dark in the IDLH atmosphere. We just use this guy, and that way it can work on any size person or any pack. That pretty much covers up our RIT pack review. We'll go over how to actually hook up with the whips, how to hook up with the universals in a minute here. Otherwise, a couple things to keep in mind. Your SCBA bottles are actually going to fail at 1700 degrees Fahrenheit if they're exposed over 10 seconds, greater than 10 seconds. Mass between 440 and 540 degrees Fahrenheit is when the plastic on it's going to start to fail. So when we go in these fires, it's normally above that temperature. Be cognizant of hitting someone's mask or the front of your mask getting hit. That's going to be one of your weakest points. The weakest point is going to be your radio strap. So the actual strap that goes from your mic back to the radio. We want to make sure we keep it in our pockets, or if we're wearing the lanyards, the purses, whatever you want to call them, make sure that's actually tucked in your jacket. Those are going to fail at 320 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's going to be the first thing to fail if it is exposed. And that's one of the biggest things that you can read in near misses and line of duty deaths is communication errors due to radios being burnt through. Come back to you here in a minute with packs and the RIT pack and how to hook up. Okay. So we have our Scott 5500 PSI bottles, our universal connection. If you follow the metal bracket of your SCBA plate down, leads you right to there, pop the cap off, and that's where we have our universal connection. The trick with the universal connection is making sure the male side go straight in. If it's on an angle at all, you're gonna, for one, have a problem connecting it, and for two, it's gonna be shooting out or leaking out a bunch of air. So when we go to hook up, we slide down, find it. Once we get straight in, quick push, you hear a snap, and we're connected. When we hook the RIT pack up with the universal to our SCBAs, it's gonna equalize the pressure of our SCBA with whatever air is in the RIT pack. Once we are equalized, we can actually unhook the RIT pack. So if we just have a firefighter that's low on air, we can quickly hook them up with the universal, get them some air, unhook, and start moving if they're able to move on their own. If they're a down firefighter, if it's a mayday situation, and they're unable to move on their own, or anything along those lines, we would just leave them hooked up, get the RIT pack hooked to them as well, with the carabiners that we have on each side. And that way we can drag them, carry them, or whatever we have to without losing the pack or having anything pull apart, possibly taking the SCBA off of them. So that's one connection that we have. Okay, the next connection we have is using our whips or our buddy breathing, which we all carry them on our right side. So right hip is your whip, easy way to remember that. So you can either unhook it for your firefighter, or you can reach back, find it, get a thumb in there, and bounce down to open it up. Once we have them connected, we have the firefighter that is low on air, hold it out. The other firefighter will take it because he will be calm. Pop off both caps. And then again, we have males and females. So either one male to one female, or vice versa. Either way, as long as we push them together and you hear the click, they are now hooked together. These we're gonna leave hooked up, and that way we have about 6 foot of hose to travel outside the building. When we're traveling like this, we're still gonna be keeping in contact. That way we don't put any strain on the connections and possibly to unconnect them, push together, pull back, and they come apart. So not only do we have the universal connection here, as we talked about with our mask on the T or the ball side, we have the universal connection with the universal EBSS and then the EBSS. So you can see ours is gray, and it will not fit into the universal because it has not been updated yet. So these will not go together. But over on this side, the two gray pieces fit together. So again, your whips, light gray is going to be your EBSS, and then your universal whip is the black color whips. Like we talked about when we did our RIT pack review, we already turn our bottle on before we go in the building. If we come to a down firefighter and we notice that there's an issue with their mask or their regulator and we need to swap them out with the mask from the RIT pack, A, we already have it on, B, we already got it pre-set up so we can easily place it against their face. What we'd want to do is first we're popping off their helmet, whether you loosen it or you just take the easy clip on the side. We're going to unclip it, loosen it, and get it out of the way. We're not worried about the helmet anymore. If it's a down firefighter, we'll deal with that another day. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start pulling up their hood and their mask at the same time. We're going to time this with the guy that's putting the mask from the RIT pack on them so that it would be fairly seamless. With just me, we'll just go over the renewal here. We're going to keep the pressure on there, pull up and over. And that way we have the hood and his mask off all in one motion. When it comes to putting the RIT pack on, you're going to take it, put his chin or her chin in there, get the mask flat. If they're able to breathe on their own at this time, they would start breathing and it would pop that valve. Otherwise, I can give them the bypass. Once we have the pressure on, grab the webbing and pull it over. Grab your tightening strap, pull down, pull back, pull down again, that way it ratchets. Come across diagonally to your big loop, do the same thing, And just those two is gonna allow him to breathe. As you can see, we don't even have much of an air leak, none at all, as he stops breathing. So just doing the two sides across from each other, kind of on a diagonal, is enough to get a good seal. Once we have that, we hook the RIT pack to them, we convert their pack, hopefully doing all of this simultaneously with multiple people in there, and we start dragging them out. This allows us to get the mask on quicker instead of trying to tighten all 4 points.